Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, if I put pages on this, can people see them in the audience? No. All right. I'm Paula Maccabe, and I am the Advocacy Director and Counsel for Water Legacy. And Water Legacy is a small grassroots nonprofit formed to protect Minnesota's water resources and the communities that rely on them. And you have in your packet the first page, which quotes from Minnesota Rule 6132-1200, and that financial assurance can cover funds both for reclamation and for corrective action. But if you read the Polymet SDEIS, it talks about contingency mitigation measures that are feasible options that could take place if compliance with water quality standards isn't attained. But the EIS says the contingency mitigation measures would not be initially included in the financial assurance package. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that question one. Either it's unanticipated liability, uncertain liability, or contingent liability, is what happens not to the water that is gathered up and put through the reverse osmosis plant process, but what about the other seepage? And first, I have a picture here in your packet of the Anaconda Mine Superfund site. There was a study done, even the projects that predicted in their environmental impact statement that would comply with water quality standards. 89% of the sulfide mine projects actually ended up violating water quality standards. And that's not usually because a treatment plant wasn't funded for long enough, but because pollution seeped into the groundwater, welled up into the surface water, or transported further and contaminated groundwater. And the EPA calculated, and this was all reported in the Federal Register in 2009, that the largest source of Superfund liability in the United States is from hard rock mining of copper and nickel. And that, at the time, they estimated that total as $2.6 billion. And the EPA said that even if there were no other copper nickel mines that run into trouble, the total estimate of taxpayer liability to clean up those mines was someplace between $20 and $54 billion. But I really want to show you, I think, the most important documents here. These are maps, maps that are taken out of the Polymet Supplemental Draft EIS. And what this blue illustration, this first one is the Polymet Mine site. And it looks kind of like a peanut, and you can see the Category 1 waste rock pile, you can see the different pits, and all this blue drainage. This is what the Polymet EIS admits is seepage to groundwater. Now, advocates from our group, volunteer expert scientists, tribal scientists, we might disagree on the volume of the uncaptured seepage, the level of contamination of the uncaptured seepage, and even the direction of the flow. But it is an undisputed fact that everybody agrees to, whether it's Polymet, the advocates, the tribes, the EPA, is that there will be uncaptured seepage. There will be uncaptured seepage at the mine site, and there will be uncaptured seepage at the tailings waste site. This little, looks like a little handprint, is the site of the tailings. And you can't tell from this little map, but the tailings site is approximately 2,900 acres, or 4.5 square miles. And so when you talk about seepage from tailings that are being dumped in a facility that size, there's some significance. As you can see, it is acknowledged that there will be seepage. Our only question is how much, how polluted, and how soon. Now, this map that's also in your packet of faulted bedrock is not contained in the EIS, though we believe it should be. A volunteer geologist came forward after the Duluth hearing, and he said, some people mentioned the question of fractures. Did you know that there were at least 14 faults immediately under the mine site? I said, I had no idea, because the EIS denies that there are fractures, and that's important, because if there are fractures underneath the mine pits and underneath the waste rock piles, then whatever pumps you have, the pollution can go into those fractures and be transported. And this right here, these black lines are fractures that the Minnesota Geological Society has verified. This is not, our geologist is really just sort of an expert who went and read the maps. So at the mine site, there's a huge potential for dispersal of pollutants through faulted bedrock. At the tailing site, one of the issues our volunteer geologists and volunteer hydrogeologists have both looked at is the Polymet EIS claims that this huge, huge tailing site basically thousands of gallons per minute of water, that the total collection from a row of pumps on one end will be 99.38% of the seepage. And what we say is, even Mary Poppins, who's practically perfect in every way, would not attain that value of collection. So what we're asking is that, in addition to looking at the costs of reverse osmosis, that there should be detailed analysis of contingent risk and the need for corrective action right away in the initial financial assurance. We're also saying that it's important that the agencies look at including joint ventures and parent companies on the permits, so that when they come out in year 10 with the elevated number for financial assurance, the company doesn't just go bankrupt and leave the bag. And finally, we would suggest that the legislative committees could have a role in supervising the progress on financial assurance and the progress in permitting to make sure that there is actually protection being provided to the taxpayer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question?